Today we're going to work on solving simple equations. These are also known as one-step equations. One thing that's important to know are the properties of equality. What that means is basically what you do on one side of an equation, you must do on the other. It just makes things equal. So if I were to have and create my own equation, which I want you guys to write down as well, if I had something like 2 times 5, and let me make that a little bigger. Okay, so if I had 2 times 5, we know that that equals 10. Now, if I did something else on the other side of the equation, so say I did 2 times 5, and I added 4 to this, okay, and I set it equal to 10, well, let's see what that equals. 2 times 5 is 10, and then when you add 4, it becomes 14. So, because I added 4 on one side of the equation, I need to add 4 on the other side of the equation so that remains equal and in check. So, what we're going to do is work on a couple simple equations. What you're going to do is do the inverse property to solve for the variable given. So, for example, the first one, I have m minus 17 equals 3. So what I like to do is I like to draw a wall, and our goal is to get that unknown variable by himself. So the object I need to move, or the number, is this minus 17. Now because it's minus 17, to cancel it out or make it equal to 0, you do the opposite or inverse operation. The opposite of subtracting is adding. So you add 17 because minus 17, or you can use it as negative 17, plus 17 is 0, and it crosses out. We're left with m on this side. Now, using the properties of equality, I added 17 on the left side, so I must do it on the right side. So when I add 17 over there, it becomes 3 plus 17, and that's 20. These are really good equations that you can check your answer. So if I have that m is equal to 20, I'm going to plug it in to my equation. So instead of m minus 17, I have 20 minus 17. When you go ahead and do the subtraction, you do find out that 3 is your answer, and you know that your answer is correct. M does equal 20. The next one I'm going to do with you guys is going to be the second problem. Negative 28 equals 4h. I need to get the variable by himself, which is that h. I draw my line, and when 4 is with the h and connected that way, that means that they are multiplying. The inverse operation that I have to do on both sides is to divide by 4. We divide top to bottom. So on the left side, I have negative 28 divided by 4. Now, to put it into a division problem on the side, you put the top number in the house, and then you put the 4 outside. Now, negative 28 divided by 4 is a negative 7. That should be a factor that you guys know, and it's equal to h. So to plug in our answer, we just plug that in. So instead of 4 times h, it's 4 times negative 7. Well, 4 times 7 is 28, and when you have a negative times a positive, it is a negative. So the answer is negative 28, and we got that correct. The next one that I want to do with you guys is the very last problem. So we have w minus 4 divided by 1/2 equals 5. Now, the first thing you need to do with simple equations is draw your line, but also simplify the side of the equation. I can actually find what minus 4 divided by 1/2 is. Minus 4 is the same thing as negative 4. So we have negative 4 divided by 1/2. When we're learning our fraction operations, we learned that we have copy, keep, change, and then flip, or copy dot flip. And so that's how you're multiplying with fractions. Well, I'm making negative 4 a fraction by putting a 1 underneath. So I have negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8. And that's what we're going to have as our answer, because negative 8 over 1 is the same as negative 8. So negative 4 divided by 1/2 is negative 8. So I have w minus 8, and that's the same thing as negative 8, equals 5. So I just simplified this area by dividing 4, or negative 4, by 1/2. Now I go ahead and solve. To get rid of the 8, or the minus 8, I add it to both sides. That cancels out on the left side, which is what we want because we want that W by himself. When we solve that, we get 13. So by plugging in 13 to your equation, you're going to get that the left side of the equation equals 5. Go ahead and try the rest of these on your screen. Make sure you pause them and try them yourself. And then when you come back, I'm going to put the answers up on this video. Now that you've come back, you should check your answers. One thing I do want to point out is you did have to divide by negative 2 over 5 right over here. You had to divide because they were multiplying. Another thing is in this equation right here, that's the pi symbol. You keep it with the number. So just adding like terms, you got 12 pi. Go ahead and try the rest of these equations on this side of your notes on your own and see how you do. Remember, you can check your answers by plugging them in for the variable. Now that we've worked with solving the equations that were given to us, we're going to start incorporating that with our word problems. So word problems are very interesting. What you have to make sure you do is underline the important parts because sometimes there's just too many words and it gets us sidetracked from what we really need to know. So I'm going to start with the very first word problem. It says Sally is baking a cake. The recipe calls for 8 cups of flour. She already put in 3 cups. How many more cups does she need to add? So we're going to create an equation and then we're going to solve it. So you cannot just solve the problem. I want you to try to start writing equations because they're going to start getting harder. But first I'm going to underline what is very important. So first off, the recipe calls for 8 cups of flour. That's something we need to know. A total of 8 cups needs to go into this cake. She already put in 3, so then how many more does she need to add? All right, so we're going to create an equation before we start solving. We know that the total amount of cups is 8 for this recipe. So we know that how many cups we put in, they have to equal 8. Now, she already put in 3 cups, but we don't know how many more cups she needs to add. So we're going to put that variable in, and you can put any variable you want. I'm going to put in C for cups. So we had 3 put in already. Then we're going to add however many more to equal that 8 total cups. So that's the equation you guys should write, but now we need to solve it. Because 3 is positive, I need it to cancel out. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Remember to draw your wall to cancel it out. Now, C is equal to 5, and make sure you label it. It's cups. Now, this could be a problem you guys can do in your head. Hey, she already put in 3 cups. You need 8. 5 is the missing number. I know you guys can do that in your head, but we need to start creating the equation that goes along with it. So that's the important part. Also, when you start putting your answers in, you need to start labeling them when it's word problems because we need to know what you're talking about. The next one I'm going to help you guys with is the very next problem. It says, how many ink cartridges can you buy with $108 if one cartridge costs $12? So we're underlining the important parts. We know that we have $108 total, but one cartridge costs $12. Well, we need to know how many we can buy total, okay? But if all the amount of money we have is $108, that's as most as we can go. So we have $108. Now, if we are talking about a price per unit, we're talking about multiplication because we know that it's $12 per cartridge, okay? So what that means is you guys are going to be multiplying. So one cartridge is going to be $12. If you were to get 2 cartridges of ink, well, that's going to be 24 because 12 times 2 is 24. So we need to know how many cartridges we can buy. So we need to multiply these 2 numbers together to make sure that they add up or multiply to create a product of 108. To find out how many total cartridges we can buy with that amount of money, we find the missing piece. Since 12 is multiplying to x, we're going to divide. And then when you end up dividing, you get that x, or the amount of cartridges you can get, is 9. So you can buy 9 cartridges, and please make sure that you label your answers. You're going to have 9 cartridges available with your money. Go ahead and try to find the answers, but also the equation for the following word problems on the screen. When you come back, I'm going to have both the equation and the answer labeled so you can check your work. Here are the answers for these 4 word problems. Make sure that you have both of the equation written and a label for your answer. Look them over, and if you have any questions, ask. Go ahead and try the rest of the word problems on this side on your own and see how you do.